Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sam, and I am a student of the Bible. I'm a pastor and a writer, and my training involves biblical studies, theology, and biblical languages. I get a question. I did this video on how do we translate the word theopneustos. Um, do we translate it inspired? Does the Bible say it's inspired? All that. You can go watch that video from 3 or 4 days ago. But I get this question every time I bring this up, even in just conversations with people when we're talking about this, a whole idea of inspiration of the text, and they find out that I'm someone who believes in the inspiration of the text, and then I recommend a book like I did the other day, this book right here, The Invention of the Inspired Text. The question comes up, how can you be someone who believes in the inspiration of the text and then recommend a book like this? Because, spoiler alert if you haven't read it yet, Poyer, he comes to the conclusion that the inspiration of the text was an invention that happened after origin and all that kind of thing. It's something that they've imposed on the text. It's not something you get from the text. And so, which is something I wouldn't agree with in this book. So, the question inevitably comes back to me like, well, why would you recommend a book that you disagree with the outcome of it? And so here's how I would answer that. There's two things about this. Number one, the first thing is this. It's that just because I recommend a book does not mean it is a sweeping endorsement of everything in the book. Okay? Book recommendations for me are like, I really loved his argument of theopneustos and where it came from and how he went, and I appreciate the scholarship in the book. I don't have to agree with every last syllable in this book. I don't have to agree with even the premise of it, or I don't have to agree with the conclusion of it. But there may be something in this book that I find is very interesting, or something that I find very helpful in this conversation. And so I'll recommend you read the book. And what I'm assuming when I recommend any book that I ever recommend, what I'm assuming is that the person I'm recommending the book to has the ability to also discern what they're reading and take the things that are in it that are good, the things that they would agree with, and then be able to discern the stuff that they may not agree with. Okay, so it's not a sweeping endorsement. Anytime I recommend any book, even in evangelical circles, Catholic circles, whatever, anytime I recommend any book, it's not a sweeping endorsement of either the author or of the entirety of that thing. It just, I found it a good resource for what I thought it would be good for. My second thing is this. Me personally, I think that we should always do things to challenge our own biases. If you were to step into my office and take a look at my bookshelves, what you would find is all kinds of different books and resources and everything that don't agree with each other. Like you would find, I think one of the funniest parts, I have two things on my shelf that I think are really interesting. One of them is theology books, and I have Spurgeon and Calvin and Wesley standing all next to each other. And it's I laugh every time I look at it, because I'm yeah, they would not have agreed with each other. There's no way. But I put them on my shelf together just to remind myself, hey, I can learn from all of these. I have books by people that you would go, yeah, that's awesome, or no way, and people that I agree with and I don't agree with, and all that kind of stuff. Why? Because I know myself, and I realize that I have personal biases when it comes to what I believe, what I think. But I also know that if I only ever put anything in front of my eyes that already agrees with my bias, I'm going to be guilty of confirmation bias. I'm going to be accruing and constricting my own thoughts and ideas to what I already think and what I already believe, and I will never be challenged. I'll never grow from it. I'll be creating an algorithm of only things that are curated to what I think already and what I believe already, and my bias then gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and my worldview gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and the people I can talk to and the people I can relate with get smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I bought in a long time ago to this idea that, hey, I do have this set of biases that I need to check and challenge all the time. And so I'm going to read things and I'm going to be trying to stretch my biases all the time with things that maybe I wouldn't even agree with, but I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to challenge myself here and I'm going to kind of come out on the back end better off. And so one of the things that I kind of adopted in my own life is, instead of creating confirmation bias with myself, I try to be curious. I try to approach life from the vantage point of curiosity. Because here's the deal. If you think back over all of history, nothing has ever really been accomplished through confirmation bias. Progress has never been made through confirmation bias. We've never invented anything out of confirmation bias. We haven't helped anyone else out of confirmation bias. We've all only ever helped someone. We've only ever created something new to help someone. Like, I think of modern medicine and all this kind of stuff. It's because people got curious. Science, the way we understand it today, is because people got curious. Archaeology, the way we have it today, is because people got curious. Curiosity has always led to growth. Confirmation bias always leads to decay. It always leads to like this thing like, no, I'm going to hunker down and I'm never going to learn anything else. I'm never going to grow. I'm never going to expand. I'm only going to ever be like this. And then we shrink and shrivel and die. But curiosity creates progress, and it creates growth, and it helps us understand things. And I've seen that in my own family, my own life. Not a lot of people know this unless you know me personally, but a couple years ago, my daughter went through something pretty significant health-wise, and she almost lost her life because of it. And if it weren't for medical professionals' curiosity years ago and trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal with this situation? How do we deal with this kind of stuff? I may have a very different story in my life right now. But because people were curious, because people asked questions, because people didn't just go, well, I already think this and I already believe this, so therefore I'm never going to challenge myself. But because they said, no, let's be curious. Let's think about this in a new way. Let's ask good questions. Let's challenge our already held beliefs. Modern medicine has progressed so far, and it still continues. And because of the experts that were surrounding my daughter during this whole thing, and because they're still curious and still trying to grow and learn, they're going to be able to help other people just like they were able to help her. And so, weren't it for like two things. Weren't it for God having his hand all over that little girl, and those medical professionals, and the curiosity that's led up to the point where they could actually have the medical advances to do what they needed to do. If it weren't for any of that, I don't know like what this story would be, but I am so appreciative and grateful for people who have had curiosity. And so I look at my own personal biases, I look at my own personal stuff, and I go, okay, what am I missing because I'm not being curious? What are my confirmation biases keeping and restricting that maybe if I was a little more curious, I could grow in? And there's discernment in that, of course, right? But don't allow your confirmation bias to rule the day. And so why would I recommend a book like this, even though I may not agree with the outcome or the conclusion? It's because there's helpful scholarship in this book to help us. And this will challenge your confirmation bias and help you grow to be better and to know things better and to do better. All right. So hopefully that helps answer. If you had that question, this would kind of be helpful for you. And give me a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.